Good evening, adventurers, and well met. Master of Dungeons here, the Master of Dungeons Twitch channel, twitch.tv/the Master of Dungeons, talking about things dungeons related to Dungeons and Dragons, the world's greatest role-playing game. Tavern Talks of the Shifty Boar Wednesday evenings. We have been discussing recently on our streams the playtest material for One D&D or D&D 5.5. The edition is going to be coming out with the new books with some tweaks to them for next year, in 2024, for the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons. Still going to be backwards compatible, as they've said, to the current 5th edition rule system with a few tweaks here and there. We've been going over the most recent playtest material 6. That came out with some revisions from playtest material 5, which was the player's handbook, and some more specific things about some of the different classes for the player's handbook part 2. The last stream we had was the week before Gen Con. Last week we were at Gen Con, the biggest gaming convention in the world, and we are back tonight to pick up where we left off, page 31. We were discussing the monk and the different subclasses of the monk, and we left off just before and looking into the Warrior of the Hand, which is a subclass that the monks can pick up, and they pick their subclass up at 3rd level. Here's a design note to me updated, of course, in the 2014 Player's Handbook. It's called Way of the Open Hand. Now it's going to be called Warrior of the Hand. Let's see, open hand technique now requires a saving throw for all 3 effects, not just 2 of them. Wholeness of body now requires a bonus action rather than action. It can be used once per long rest. And its healing is tied to the martial arts diet and wisdom. Fleet Step is a new 11th level feature. It replaces Tranquility, one of the lowest rated monk features. As I'd mentioned in previous streams, and I actually was discussing it last night with some of my players in my Tuesday night client game, that monk, as I've mentioned before, is the class that I have seen played least. Again, I just closed out 40 years of being a DM at Gen Con last week. And in those 40 years of being a dungeon master, obviously when monks were introduced in 1st edition, I believe it was with Unearthed Arcana, it has definitely been the least played class that I've seen played. However, I will say that being that so few of them have been played, I do remember many of them that have been played as DMing for those players. So obviously I could see Tranquility being one of the lowest rated monks features, lowest rated class. Criminal Palm is no longer available, is no longer able to deal an uncapped amount of damage, which is too powerful for the number of discipline points. Of course, we did mention last time that discipline points were previously key points, and now they're going to be called discipline points. All right, so let's see what we've got here. 3rd level open hand technique. Whenever you hit a creature with one of the attacks granted by your flurry of blows, you can impose one of the following effects on that target. Addled. Target must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or can't take reactions until the end of your next turn. That's interesting. Push. The target must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed up to 15 feet away from you. Away from yourself. Okay. Again, we're not looking at trying to harp on typos or grammatical errors. We definitely know that there are plenty of grammatical and errors and such like that in our Adventures League adventures. And then topple. The target must succeed on dexterity saving throw or it has the prone condition. That's not too bad. That can be pretty powerful because you can get 2 with your flurry of blows. Flurry of blows, spending your discipline point, gets you as a bonus action, gets you 2 extra attacks with your unarmed attack, so you could get 2. Looks like maybe. Again, after the last stream, we literally closed it right here and just opened it back up from the page. So these are all brand new things looking at. Wholeness of body. You gain the ability to heal yourself as a bonus action. You can spend 1 discipline point and roll your martial arts die. You regain a number of hit points equal to the number rolled plus your wisdom modifiers, I'm guessing, as it mentioned here. You can use this feature a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. That is 6th level. It's interesting that, I mean, your martial arts die is going to go up as you level, but what I always talk about when you're balancing different abilities, spells, as you might have seen our Dungeons and Deliberations the week prior to Gen Con, we were discussing creating cantrips for my homebrew world. Comparing it to traits and features that are already in the game or that other classes might have, that's very interesting. That allow you to do that a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier. Whereas, for example, your second wind for a fighter, as it's still a bonus action, they do have to spend a resource with the discipline point, but there are a number of ways that we've seen monks be able to get discipline points back. And this, even though it is 6th level ability, granted, at the same time, it almost seems as if it becomes more powerful than a fighter's second wind. But again, that's just my first reaction, especially since your martial arts die goes up as you level anyway. Your wisdom most likely is going to go up as a monk as you get higher level, and then you'll be able to use it more often as your wisdom modifier goes up. Not only do you get more uses of it, but you get more healing out of it. Let's see, 11th level Fleet Step. You can easily stride out of harm's way. You can use the Step of the Wind option of your martial arts discipline feature without spending any discipline points. So at 11th level, you can automatically use Step of the Wind without spending any points. So as a bonus action, let's scroll back up just to refresh ourselves on what Step of the Wind does. There we go. Step of the Wind. You can spend 1 discipline point to take both the dash and disengage actions as a bonus action, and your jump distance is doubled. So at 11th level, as a bonus action, every round for free, you can also take the disengage and dash action. Maybe they're overpowering monks because they want people to more people to play monks, maybe? I don't know. That becomes a fairly powerful 11th level ability. So for the rest of your career as a monk, you can, as a bonus action, take the dash or disengage and dash action. Not one or the other. You can probably choose not to take one of them if you don't want, but you have the option of taking them both, it seems, which is interesting. The Quivering Palm, the Dimmak from Bloodpoint or Bloodsport. You get the ability to set up lethal vibrations in someone's body. When you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you can spend 3 discipline points to start these imperceptible vibrations, which last for a number of days equal to your monk level. The vibrations are harmless unless you use your action to end them. To do so, you and the target must be on the same plane of existence. When you use this action, the target must make a con saving throw, taking 10d12 plus your monk level of force damage on a failed save, or half as much damage on a successful one. You can only have 1 creature under the effect of this feature at a time. You can end the vibrations harmlessly without using an action. So this ability is only limited by the number of discipline points you have. Interesting. All right. It'd be fun to actually, if I were able to actually play test some of these different monk subclasses. I do have a monk that I have not played in 5th edition. Of course, when you play Adventurers League, you amass basically DM rewards for DMing. Basically, with the amount of rewards, they had rewards up to Season 7, which was the Tomb of Annihilation, and then shortly after they started Season 8, which was Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Dungeons of the Mad Mage. I think it was sometime in late winter, early spring, you had to spend all of your points or you would lose them all. So I went through and used the literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of rewards that I had, and created a bunch of characters, leveled them up, all that stuff like that, put magic items on them and such like that. Then of course all of the DM experience that I've gotten, rewards since season 8 up to current, which if they were still doing the seasons, this is like season 13 or 14, something like that, of it. But basically I could create any character pretty much 20th level, pretty much any magic items I want. I do have a monk that I did create that is a dual weapon, a dual wielder, 2-weapon fighting, that does have a eldritch staff in one hand and then has a staff of striking in the other. And it'd be really interesting to see playtests like this new warrior of the hand, just to see how powerful they are. All right, moving on to paladin. Obviously, the paladins, telling you what paladins do. For those who aren't sure, paladins are basically holy warriors, holy knights. Or unholy warriors, unholy knights, depending on how you want to look at it, depending on what type of campaign you're playing. See, lay on hands, of course. Again, most of the classes that used to get spellcasting at second level, like the ranger as well, they moved the spellcasting to first level, which is really cool. As we've seen in the previous Player's Handbook playtest material, they changed the Paladin Smite. So instead of being able to smite pretty much as long as you have spell slots, you can, they've taken the Paladin Smite down to just once a turn. And I can definitely tell you that's going to be interesting for some Paladins. We have a player playing a Minotaur Paladin in my Tuesday night Dragonlance games, and they basically just become a massive destruction, especially in a larger battle. They're just going through and being able to smite everything, which is pretty cool. Definitely from the player perspective, it does kind of, again, as the DM, it doesn't bother me because I don't take anything, just in the years of doing it, I don't take anything personally. I don't look at anything as like, if the players' characters don't necessarily have a challenge, and they want to, be really strong and heroic and stuff like that, that's totally fine. If players are concerned about, those types of things, if you're doing a homebrew game or something like that, discuss that with your players. You can make those types of homebrew rules, such as the Paladin Smite only being allowed to do it once a turn, without having to put the players in like a no-win situation to make anything challenging for them. That does obviously become a little bit more difficult at early tier 3 is not too difficult, but once they start getting to 14th, 15th level, the balancing of 5th edition and most D&D kind of falls out, as it is average for characters and DMs and players to kind of end a campaign or anything like that around 10th or 11th level, right towards the end of tier 2 usually. You'll see lots of the hardcover books from Wizards of the Coast will rarely go very far even into tier 3. I think and each one of the hardcovers kind of has a level cap for them as well. You do have a number of Adventurers League specific modules and adventures that do go up to tier 4 all the way to 20th level, which is pretty cool too. All right, so let's go ahead and see your Channel Divinity subclass. Faithful Steed, or Protection, still 6th level. Or of Courage goes to still at 10th level. Restoring Touch, or Expansion. I think that moves it up from 15 or 10 or 15 feet to 30 feet, I believe. That's when that goes up there. Let's see what the Paladin updates are here in the sidebar. Lay on Hands is now a bonus action. That's pretty cool. That I don't mind. So they dropped cantrips from the Paladin and gave them weapon mastery. So also with your Divine Smite, it also gives you a list of Paladin exclusive Smite spells that you always have prepared. So there's a new channel divinity rule in the multi-classing sidebar. We'll check that out. Normally we skip over the multi-classing, mostly because of just going over the basics of each class without really diving into the multi-classing. Again, if you want these different PDFs, if you want to join my community Discord server here on Twitch, twitch.tv/the Master of Dungeons, you can hit the About Us section. There should be a panel down there. You can click on that to join our community Discord, and we put up all of the PDFs relevant for all of the playtest material, and especially dealing with organized play, the Adventurers League. We have that all in our on our server, kind of a one-stop shop place to get all this. So you can easily go there to get that. You can also go to D&D Beyond. They also have been releasing all of the playtest material on D&D Beyond as well. Paladin subclasses. How much the level progression in the 2014 Player's Handbook. Or protection return to 6th level. Back to 10th level for our courage. Good. And unarmed strikes, okay. So they did put the R expansion back to 18th level and got rid of Divine Conduit. All right, talks about the Paladin. Everything else seems to be the same. Still all the weapons and armor. I'm sorry, all weapons and right here, and all armors and shields. All right, so they said multi-classing Channel Divinity. If you have more than one class of Channel Divinity feature, a class's use of the feature can be expended only on that class's Channel Divinity options. That's cool. So if you had multi-classing Cleric, Paladin, you can only use the Cleric's uses of Channel Divinity for the Cleric's abilities that you have, and you can only use the Paladin's Channel Divinity for the Paladin's Channel Divinity uses, which you get with your subclass and such. All right, normal Paladin class features. Lay on hands. Bonus action, touch a creature, draw power from the pool of healing, restore a number of hit points to that creature up to the maximum amount remaining in the pool. In addition, you can spend 5 hit points from the pool of healing to remove the poison condition from the creature rather than using those points to restore hit points. Oh, so instead of 5 points to remove a bunch of different things like diseases, things like that, maybe it's got some other abilities that will boost that later on, but at first level you can only remove poison, the poison condition. Still 5 times your Paladin level is the pool. Spell casting at first level. Pair levels of spells. Of course, from the divine spell list, from what we've seen, that they're changing things around to where there is just basically the 3 spell lists. There's primal, divine, and arcane. The subclasses specifically will have changes to those rules, and the classes obviously will have specific changes against specific beats general. That way you're not going to have, okay, you have to have a bard list. Okay, you have to have a paladin list. You have to have a ranger list. You have to have a druid list. Now it's just going divine, arcane, and primal. Fifth level paladin. Obviously, preparing the spells, whatever spells you have, spell slots you have active, you can prepare the spells here. You might have 4 first level slots, 2 second level slots, but you could prepare 3 first level spells and 3 second level spells as well. Because the Paladin feature gives you spells that you always have to prepare. Those spells don't count against the number of spells on the list you can prepare. So you only change one spell a day for a paladin after a long rest. Interesting. Weapon mastery. Each weapon has a specific property that can be unlocked. The mastery property that can be unlocked. So your training with weapons allow you to use the mastery property of 2 kinds of weapons of your choice, like longswords and javelins. Paladin Smite. You have mastered smiting your targets with divine energy. You always have certain spells ready when you reach a paladin level specified in the Smite spells table. You thereafter always have the listed spells prepared. In addition, you can cast one of your prepared spells from this feature without expending a spell slot. So they're completely getting rid of Divine Smite as it used to work before. Interesting. So you always have, at second level, you always have Divine Smite and Thunderous Smite, Shining Smite, Blinding Smite, Staggering Smite, and Banishing Smite. So they're, in part 2, they've taken away Divine Smite completely, huh? Yeah. So now you can't even Divine Smite like you normally would in 5th edition. So it was just to once per turn, and then now it's just completely gone and changed with spell lists. Huh. Don't know about that. Mostly because most of these spells, unless they redo them, are pretty horrible. To be honest, some of them are okay, but most of the time, paladins would just rely on spending a spell slot to do extra damage than to worry about blinding a creature. If you can just finish the creature straight out, there's no point to casting some of these spells. Maybe Divine Smite is similar to the actual old Divine Smite. I'll have to check that out when we get the spells. Defense, dueling, great weapon fighting, or protection for fighting style at 2nd level. Channel Divinity, Divine Sense, of course. Use Channel Divinity twice. You regain 1 expended use when you finish a short rest, and all of them when you finish a long rest. So you get extra Channel Divinities when you reach certain levels. Oh, that's back to monks. Sorry about that. We scrolled up a little too high. So it goes up to 3 maximum. I'm not sure, like, some of these things they add in here, and I don't know. There's like wasted time just putting this Channel Divinity chart here. They can just put Channel Divinity. You have 2 uses until you this number of uses go up by 1 when you reach 11th level. That way you don't have to have a chart to go look at it, because it'd be different. You need a chart if it's like 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. You got to figure out what level those come up to. But you can just say in the description of Channel Divinity, you get an extra use at 11th level, and it goes up to 3 uses. Divine Sense, it's a bonus action. Ooh. So they did change this around again to where for the next 10 minutes, or until you have an incapacitated condition, you know the location of any creature of those types within 60 feet of yourself, and you know its creature type. It used to be that isn't under total cover. So even if they're under total cover in the next room, in the next cavern over within 60 feet, you know their location and what type they are. That I like, because I see a lot of paladins using that, especially since we're playing organized play, and it is rules as written. They try to use that to, hey, is there any undead, or are there any fiends or anything like that around? And they may be standing right by a wall, and there's an undead or fiend on the other side of that, but because it's behind total cover, they cannot detect it. So I am glad that they changed that. So here we have Devotion, Glory, and Vengeance in the playtest material. ASI or feet. Extra attack still. You always have Find Steed prepared. So every day you can cast the spell once without expending a spell slot. Oh, that's just something they kind of changed there. You create a protective, invisible aura that extends 10 feet from you in every direction, but doesn't extend through total cover. And of course, the aura is inactive while you have the incapacitated condition. Of course, the auras don't stack. Subclass feature, ASI feat or another feat, abjure foes. As a magic action. Basically, magic action is replacing the cast a spell action. Present your holy symbol or weapon, you can target a number of creatures equal to your charisma modifier. Wisdom saving throw or have the dazed and frightened conditions for 1 minute. Or until it takes damage. Aura of Courage. So not only do you get a bonus to saving throw equal to your charisma mod, they're immune to the frightened condition, of course. So your companions could be frightened, but then if they enter into your aura, they're no longer affected by that condition while they're in there. But if they leave, they still they get the frightened condition back until it's, of course, wears off from whatever gave them that condition. Radiant strikes you can do as an extra D8 radiant, or unarmed strike, of course, melee weapons or unarmed strike. It's interesting that they say melee weapon because, I don't know, it'd be cool to be able to, if you wanted to play a ranged paladin. Restoring touch. Okay, so now that's where they, as I thought they would probably put in later. Then you can not only poison, but you can even remove blinded, charmed, dazed, deafened, frightened, paralyzed, or stunned. Or expansion of 30 feet. And then now they're putting this, instead of having it a different cap, they actually move the cap to this paladin subclass instead of the class itself. For those of you that might not be aware, in older editions of Dungeons and Dragons, they changed it, I believe, when it came around to 3rd edition. They might have toyed around with it a little bit in 2nd edition, but paladins used to have to be lawful good. And of course, there was the anti-paladin that came out in a awesome Dragon magazine article back in the 80s, talking about the anti-paladin. They changed the name in 5th edition. Most people would recognize it as a blackguard. But yeah, the anti-paladin was an awesome article back in Dungeon magazine back in the 80s. If you ever have a chance to go back through and check out that article, it's really, really interesting. Basically talking about fallen paladins, i.e. Lord Soth in Ravenloft and Dragonlance. Breaking their oaths. Paladins of broken a vow typically seeks absolution from a priest of the same faith or from another paladin of the same order. Now, I will say this, from a DMing perspective, to run redemption storylines with paladins is a lot of fun. Oops, didn't mean to do that. running redemption storylines for paladins is a lot of fun to do something like that as well, or even for characters that like I remember a campaign we played, and I actually played in this one. I didn't run it, but the character started off as a fighter and wanted to change over to a paladin, and the DM decided to put in a storyline instead of the character, instead of just saying, okay, go ahead and recreate your character and you're a paladin now, and you've always been a paladin or anything like that. What the DM did was put in a storyline where that character, that fighter, went through a bunch of these different tests and things of that nature, and finally at the end, they were able to switch their character over to a paladin. So it became a story, like a journey, to become that instead, which is really cool as well. And again, like when things say at the DM's discretion, especially when it comes to like this, of forced to take a more appropriate subclass or even abandon the class, it's best as the DM to do that, as we just mentioned, in the story of the adventure that the characters are playing, and not just saying, well, you know, it always comes back to communication with your players, especially playing with a home group or the same group of players, homebrew, stuff like that. It's always very important to communicate with your players so that your players understand, hey, we're all playing this game together. A lot of DMs forget the fact that they're a player too, just like the player characters. They just have the responsibility of running the story. And the players also have a tendency to forget that the DM is a player just like them. And you want to make sure that everyone's having as much fun as possible together, not sacrificing your fun or other players' fun at the table because one player wants something specific and they feel that that's the only way they can have fun. You want to really kind of have discussions with the player to remind them, hey, this is a game for that we're all playing together for fun, and we want to make sure that it's as enjoyable for the majority of people as possible. Sometimes that will mean that you'll have to take a back seat for the players. So, but definitely not big fan of the word forced. So definitely speak with your players if they start playing inappropriately or something like that, or talk to them about, hey, your character's playing a little different. Let's go ahead and start working on the story where your character is going to kind of transition from maybe being a paladin to a fighter because of the fact that they've abandoned their faith or something like that. Or even if like they've maybe had a Giaz, however you'd like to pronounce that, had a spell cast on them and they've done some evil things and they're still going to have to, okay, you're going to eventually play as a fighter for a few levels until you're able to come back and redeem yourself. Things like that are great to have in storylines for paladins. All right, Oath of Devotion. Oath spells, revised list, and then of course they changed the smite spells because they're now in the paladin smite feature. Smite of Protection, 15th level. Holy Nimbus. All right, oath spells for the Oath of Devotion. Always have them prepared. Protection from evil and good, and Shield of Faith. Understandable. Aid, Zone of Truth, Beacon of Hope, Dispel Magic, Freedom of Movement, Guardian of Faith, Commune, and Flame Strike. Always amazes me how they have to add in, let's add in a Flame Strike. I don't know. When you get up to tier 3, Flame Strike really is not going to be as effective against things. So some sort of other utility spell, like a lot of these things are utilities, like Beacon of Hope, Dispel Magic. Some other sort of 5th level, with Devotion, you could have a Greater Restoration instead of Flame Strike, because that's just, to me, feels inappropriate to have all of these other spells that really don't have anything to do with doing damage, but more protection and healing and dispelling and all of that, getting guidance, and then bam, you get Flame Strike. I would remove that if it was me. Sacred Weapon. For 1 minute, you add your charisma modifier to attack rolls that you make with that weapon. Each time you hit with it, you cause it to deal its normal damage type or radiant damage. Bright light for 20 feet, dim light for 20 feet. All right. It only lasts for 1 minute. Oh, that's interesting. Depending on what type of paladin you're playing, very rarely. Now, it does happen, but very rarely have I seen paladins whose charisma scores massively are over their strength scores. Like, I very rarely will see a paladin with like a strength of like 12 and then put everything into their charisma. Especially at third level, most paladins at third level are going to have a higher strength than their charisma. But I guess it does add an addition to, is that what it's saying? For 1 minute, you add your charisma modifier to attack rolls you make with the weapon. So I guess what it's saying is that in addition to your strength, and it's also only to attack, so it's not to damage rolls. For 1 minute, you add your charisma modifier to your attack rolls. So I guess it would be in addition to your strength, is what it seems like it's saying. Okay. That's alright, I guess. Definitely not as strong as some other third level class features, or subclass features, I should say. You can change the damage type to radiant, which that's actually cool. As it does shift to where it's not a normal weapon, it's actually dealing radiant damage. So any creatures like that are resistant to bludgeoning, slashing, or piercing, changing that damage would be cool, especially by third level that don't necessarily have a magical weapon yet. All right. Took a second to reread that, but okay, that's pretty cool. Now, it is important to look at the spells. This is a really cool ability, Aura of Devotion, where if they're in your aura, they cannot be charmed. Or I shouldn't say they can't be charmed, they're immune to the charmed condition. And of course, very similar to the frightened effect. When they enter the aura, the condition has no effect while they're in there. It's very important to read a lot of the spells because it specifically has to state that it gives the charmed, especially the way they're doing the new conditions and the descriptions and such of the spells. It's going to be very important as the DM to look up what, if the spell actually gives the charmed condition. Because a lot of spells don't necessarily give the charmed condition, but also have the limitation that creatures that cannot be charmed are not affected by this spell. That's not the same as the charmed condition. So it depends on how they're going to word those spells. Smite of Protection. Never cast any of your paladin smite spells. You and your allies in your aura of protection have half cover until the start of your turn. Half cover, what's minus or plus 2 to your AC, 3/4 plus 5, and then total cover, they can't see you. All right, and the 20th level cap for the Aura or the Oath of Devotion is a bonus action. You imbue your Aura of Protection with holy power, granting you the following benefits for 1 minute or until you end them as a bonus action. Granting the following benefits, not just one, but all of them. Holy Ward, you have advantage on any saving throw you're forced to make by a fiend or an undead. Radiant damage, whenever an enemy starts its turn in the aura, that creature takes radiant damage equal to your proficiency bonus plus your charisma modifier. Now, 20th level, that could be pretty high. The aura is filled with bright light that is sunlight. Oh, goodness. Look out, vampires. You can also restore a usage by expending a 5th level spell slots. That's pretty cool. Especially since you're not going to be spending your spell slots for smites. And of course, the tenets: honesty, courage, compassion, honor, and duty. Yep. All that seems pretty cool. Again, I know it seems nitpicky, and again, it's just my opinion, but I don't see Flame Strike really fitting in with all of those spells. All right, Oath of Glory. Lasts for an hour instead of 10 minutes. So alacrity, is that going to have something to do with speed? All right, Oath spells. Guiding Bolt, Heroism, Enhanced Ability, Magic Weapon, Haste, Protection from Energy. And again, let's just go and fall back on Flame Strike. Alright, Inspiring Smite for this subclass. Immediately after you deal damage to a creature with any of your Paladin Smite spells, you can spend one use of your channeled divinity and distribute temporary hit points to creatures of your choice within 30 feet of yourself, which can include you. The total number of temporary hit points equals 2.8 plus your Paladin level, divided among the chosen creatures however you like. Lots of different things we've read about. Some of these subclasses are giving out temporary hit points. And temporary hit points don't stack. You always say, if you're presented, like, say, for example, you have 5 temporary hit points, and you gain temporary hit point of 10 temporary hit points, you don't go up to 15, you just go to 10. You take whatever the highest number is of temporary hit points. That if you lose them, of course, from taking damage through violence or whatever, you can still gain more. And of course, you keep them until you finish a long rest, and then they all disappear. Lots of redundant, I won't say lots, there are a few redundant abilities from these different subclasses that grant temporary hit points. Imperial Assassin, this bonus action, this lasts for an hour now instead of 10 minutes. Does expend a channel divinity. I don't know, something about this is a bonus action. You can expend it, use of your channel divinity. For now, you get advantage on strength, athletics, dexterity, acrobatics, push, drag, carry, lift twice as much weight as normal, and distance for your long and high jumps increases. It seems as if that could be bolstered some other way, maybe. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I really can't think of it, but it just seems a little lackluster versus other third level subclass abilities. Okay, so it does increase your speed. That is actually pretty cool. I do like that, to be able to increase another player's speed if they start their turn in your aura. That's awesome. I do like that. Glorious Defense. You can turn defense into a sudden strike. Hit by an attack roll. You can use your reaction to grant a bonus to the target's AC against the attack. Potentially cause it to miss. Use your charisma modifier. If attack misses, you can make one weapon attack against the attacker as part of this reaction, provided that it's within your weapon's range. That's pretty cool. Very cool. And Living Legend, again, the 20th level from the subclass from the Paladin instead of the Paladin itself. Empower yourself with the legends, whether true or exaggerated, of your great deeds. As a bonus action, you gain the following benefits for 1 minute. Gain advantage on all charisma checks. Fail saving throw, you can use your reaction to re-roll it. You must use this new roll. I mean, this is okay. Because you're having to, you only get the benefits for a minute, but I mean, this right here, I'm not sure why they would put a reaction in there. Because I don't think the fighter's ability to use their, make a reroll for a save is a reaction. I don't think it is. And that could probably remove the reaction for, because this is a 20th level ability. Once on each of your turns, when you make an attack roll with a weapon and miss, you can cause that attack to hit instead. Restore it by expending a 5th level spell slot. And then we have the Tenets of Glory. And then finally, the Oath of the Ancients, which I believe the paladin in the D&D movie, Honor Among Thieves, was an Oath of the Ancients. They actually mentioned the tenets of the Oath, the tenets of the Ancients in that. And then Ed tells him to stop talking just before they part ways. All right, Nature's Wrath. Up that, okay. All right, oath spells. I have not played an Oath of the Ancients Paladin. I did not realize that they were as tied to nature as, or maybe they're switching it to nature. I always thought of the Oath of the Ancients as, ancient ancestors and wise and stuff like that. I didn't know it was more of a nature-looking thing. Snare Strike, Speak with Animals, Misty Step, Moonbeam. Kind of creating like an entangle around you. I noticed that each one of these are only having one Channel Divinity option, as the older subclasses had 2 Channel Divinity options. Or warding, ancient magic lies so heavily upon you that it forms an eldritch ward. You and your allies have resistance to necrotic, psychic, and radiant damage while in your aura of protection. Wow. Psychic damage resistance in 5th edition is one of the rarest resistances to find for player characters. Especially because, like, if you look at the Totem Barbarian with special rings and things like that, one of the big things that Totem Barbarians from normal 5th edition, finding like a ring of a psychic resistance or something like that is pretty powerful in and of itself. So getting that at 7th level to be able to give that resistance to yourself and all of your allies in your aura is pretty powerful. Not saying it's bad, but it is pretty powerful. Undying Sentinel, drop to 1 point instead, and you regain a number of hit points equal to 3 times your paladin level. Whew. Can't be magically aged. Yeah, this whole thing of changing out, okay, like instead of getting reduced to 0, you're actually dropping to 1 hit point instead, and then they're having you regain a number of hit points for whatever reason. It's interesting. We'll have to see how it works. Again, that's the reason why these are play tests. As a bonus action for Elder Champion at 20th level, Oath of the Ancients. Enemies in the aura have disadvantage on saving throws against your spells and Channel Divinity options. Like, see how powerful that is versus you gain advantage on all charisma checks. And at the start of each of your turns, you gain 10 hit points regeneration, and then also whenever you cast a spell as a cast time of 1 action, you can cast it as a bonus action. Now, obviously, as we've been watching and talking about this, you can see how this Elder Champion is way, way, way more powerful than the 20th level ability of the Living Legend. Advantage on charisma checks versus some of the other things there. Saving throw reroll. That's cool. And then, of course, once on each of your turns, if you miss, you can cause an attack to hit instead. I mean, when you're 20th level paladin, you're usually having between plus 15 plus 18 to attack. Very rarely are you going to miss in the first place. And then this one over here, all your spells that have a 1 action time become bonus actions instead. You're regenerating every turn, and all of your enemies have disadvantage on saving throws against your spells and the channel divinity options as if they're in your aura. That's way more powerful than the previous oath, the Oath of Glory's 20th level ability. All right, and we got enough time. We got a few minutes left. Actually, let's go ahead and hold off on the Oath of Vengeance. I really love the Oath of Vengeance. That's one of the more commonly played oaths, at least in 5th edition. As myself being a dungeon master, I've seen the majority of paladins that play paladins are playing Oath of Vengeance. So we'll take some time. We'll go ahead and hold off until next week to take a look at that. So we are on page 39. We'll go ahead and jot that down. But we will be back tomorrow, hopefully back tomorrow on time. If not, we might start a little bit later from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern. And same on Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern, we have our Dungeon Delving, which we're playing a D&D adjacent video game, Lord of the Rings Online. We are meeting up with the collective on Monday evening to maybe discuss some different shows that we might want to stream. Also discussing some changing around some of the times for streams as well to accommodate the viewers and everything. And then we should, of course, be back Sunday evening, which is August 13th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, to play our live D&D play of Veterans Vault Part 1. But yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for checking us out today. And of course, thanks to all our supporters, especially our patrons from Patreon. If you'd like to help support the channel, please consider becoming a patron or subbing here on Twitch, twitch.tv/themasterofdungeons. The link to our Patreon page, as well as all of our other social media accounts and other channels, can be found in the About Us section below here on Twitch. If you would, subscribe to us on YouTube, maybe like and comment and share on some of the videos. That will help us out a lot. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Give us some likes, retweets, shares, all that good stuff. Every sub, like, and share does help us immensely. If you want to join our community, our Master of Dungeons community Discord server, again, the link below, just click on the Discord panel where you can help shape a caring, accepting, and inclusive community. Also, financially, if you want to help support us, you can check out our merch store. We have some Master of Dungeons merch, t-shirts, hoodies, some glassware, ball caps, etc. But thank you, of course, for watching. And as always, we'll see you next time. Happy adventuring.